Time for the workshop to begin. Just a quick roll call. Jason Beebe. Jason here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Janet Hutchison.
Here.
Patricia Youngman. I saw your name up there. Heard you. Thank you.
Did.
Gail Merritt. Is Gail here? No, Gail is not going to make the workshop. She has a graduation to attend, but I think she's going to make it for the council meeting. Mr. Papke, Jeff Papke. Jeff, you on? Okay, Jeff's not here. How about Teresa Rodriguez? Are you here? Okay, well, there are the 4 of the 7 of us, so we have a quorum. We'll start the workshop and turn it over to Eric Klon.
Yeah, so good evening, Eric Klon, City Engineer. Thank you for being here and participating tonight. There's 2 subjects that we would like to chat with council about. The first would be our electrical franchise fees, and then we would also like to give you an update on where our water fund is at. So with that said, I think we'd like to jump into the electrical franchise fee discussion first. And Steve, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Eric. So members of council and Mayor Steve, we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks, a couple of sessions here at our council. And as we all know, our electrical franchise fee agreement with Pacific Core is up the end of June. And we listened to council as we discussed the sensitivity and awareness that changes in billings, even though they may be small in the scheme of things, during this COVID-19 uncertainty as it relates to our economic condition, our economy, that just provides more uncertainty, and raising rates at any amount, big or small, has some ramifications that just create more uncertainty and more anxiousness during these unprecedented times. So we heard that from council, and as a result of that, what we have decided to do as a direction with this agreement is to extend the existing agreement as it is. And working with Pacific Core, they have a 9-month extension document that they regularly use in this instance. That would give us 9 months to decide what we're going to do. If we decided next week to do something, that's fine. So anytime during that period, we can make the adjustments and update our franchise agreement however we wish to do so. Now, one of the things we take great pride in here, your staff, is we get things done. So 9 months, in my opinion, is way more time than we need, but it does give us time to see how this phase 2 COVID-19 a release that we just recently got from the governor here in Crook County, how that plays out, what type of certainty surrounding a resurgence of COVID-19 cases, what we need to do with our water bill to keep our utilities in good shape financially. We can answer all those questions and take a little bit of time with the electrical franchise agreement with Pacific Core. Having said that, I would also make the council aware that we did have a very strong month in terms of the amount we received for May, that we just received word of, got the check from our franchise agreement, so it was the biggest check we've ever received in 1 month, which tells me and confirms that they're continuing to expand their operations up there, and their capacity for more power continues to increase. So it's not as though it doesn't appear that the COVID-19 pandemic has done anything to degrade what we've been receiving in franchise fees. In fact, quite the opposite, in that it seems as though the demand for their services and their demand for power usage continues to increase. So that's the approach that we think is the best approach today. And again, as we get more certainty, we can jump back in and finalize an updated agreement at any time. and I would anticipate over the next couple months we would take that tack and move towards updating that agreement with council approval. Questions or comments?
I really like that, Steve. That's an excellent way to go. I'm really glad to hear that you guys are doing that.
Well, thank you. I think it's the right thing to do right now, and we just have too much uncertainty, and you know, who knows where the economy is going to go, and hopefully it snaps right back. But in the event it doesn't, I think holding off on this is absolutely the right thing to do for our people and our citizens, our customers.
I agree with you.
Okay, and we are in a workshop, so we won't be taking any votes on any of this at the moment.
Yeah. So just be advised, council, what will happen, and we have Jared in the room with us as our guider here on all things legal. But what we would expect, what you should expect rather, is we would have a resolution adopting this agreement to extend go with the existing agreement, extend the current agreement for 9 months, and that will be at the next June 23rd council meeting. Is that correct, Councilor?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So that's what I would advise you to expect from staff coming up at the last council meeting in June.
This is Janet Hutchison. I think that's a great alternative too, to wait the 9 months. But I would like to see, I know you said maybe in a couple of months we'll be back again. I would like to have us wait until later in the fall or winter to see exactly what's going to happen with this COVID-19 before we think of increasing the franchise fees. So, good call.
Okay, and absolutely, that's why we look to you for guidance, and absolutely we can certainly do that. And I guess it's just against my regular mode of operation is to not put things off too long. So, but given your point, Janet, you're exactly right. We just don't know enough right now, and if that takes another 6 months or 9 months to get the information to make a good decision, I think we all agree that would be okay.
Thank you.
All right. Teresa, glad you could join us.
Oh, yeah, I'm running a little late from work. Sorry.
No problem. That's all right. Thanks for being here.
So with that said, Teresa, you know, you were the ones that really put our nose on the cheese as it relates to sensitivity for increasing utility costs, whether it's power or any other utility, to our citizens during this uncertain time with the COVID-19 pandemic. So did you get the gist of the approach that staff is taking? Do you have any questions about that?
No, somewhat. Just give me a brief update if you would, please.
Just real quickly, on the June 23rd meeting, we're going to have a resolution that adopts the extension of the existing agreement for up to 9 months.
Okay.
So we'll have 9 months to decide if we want to change it, and anytime during that 9 month we can do so.
Okay. Yep, that sounds great.
Okay. So, Steve, you're up then we'll...
I think we're done with the Pacific Power franchise, and again, just FYI for council, when we do open up our public meeting, that will be postponed on the agenda. So I think with that, we're back to Eric Klon.
Thank you. Once again, Eric Klon, City Engineer. I appreciate everybody jumping on this forum tonight. We'd like to talk about water rates again. We've had a couple of conversations on this. We will be moving forward with tiered water rates, but we wanted to give you an update on how that fund is doing. We're struggling with revenues a little bit, and so I'd like to walk you through that fund. So with that said, James, could we start? So I guess the good news, this is our wastewater monthly rate, and you can see that for the last 3 years we've held rates steady. We're going to be able to hold them steady again. I think a good thing to realize from this graph is what happens when rates stay stagnant for quite a while. You have those large increases that we saw in the early 2000s. But with that said, once again, we'll be able to hold our wastewater rate, residential rate, and base rate flat this year, and we will be raising commodity rates a little bit. So moving forward onto the next graph page. This is where our water rates currently sit as compared to our neighboring cities. I somewhat dislike showing these comparisons. It's a good thing to know where our neighbors are at, but everybody has different issues and opportunities with their systems. You know, they may have a very recent upgrade where they have a lot of capacity and they're having to charge higher rates, or they may be charging very low rates, but need to, you know, are on the cusp of needing an expansion. But with this said, we're a little higher than Redmond, but significantly lower than Bend and Madras. This is for an average residential customer using about 7,500 gallons of water a month. So this would be winter usage moving forward. This graph we've seen before. This kind of shows one of the issues that we're facing. Our residential consumption is going down as compared to our total consumption. And you can see how that total consumption is really starting to spike in the summertime. So we had talked about that, where maybe our average residential customer uses 4 times more water during the summer than the winter. We're seeing some of our very large industrial customers using up to 11 times more during the summer as compared to the winter, which brings up the issue of we're just not selling them any water during the winter, and it becomes very tough on our budget. Moving forward to the next page. Take a little time and go through this graph. It's a busy graph, but it really shows the issue at hand. So if we look at July and start working our way up, the dark blue line, that was 2017. So you can see we sold about 100 million gallons of water in July of 2017. July of 18, that jumped up to about 110 million gallons of water. But unfortunately, in 19, that dropped down fairly significantly to 90 million gallons. So you can see overall, if we look at that lower line, our 2019 water sales was significantly less than 17 and 18. And we did not expect that. We expected to continue growing, and that decrease in water sales really somewhat shocked us. If we can move to the next few slides, we'll see that impact. So here, once again, this is just another way to look at it. If we look at the left-hand side, July in the red, that would be July of 18. The blue would be July of 19. And you can see we sold, as far as revenue, significantly less water. That can be related to some of the big industrial customers were using a lot of bulk water for dust control. In 17, 18, they stopped, but you can see how our revenue is significantly less in 18 versus 19. And, you know, if you guys have any questions, please stop me as we roll through this. We have fiscal year and calendar year, but essentially the summer of 2019, we sold significantly less water than we did the summer of 2018. Moving forward. Yeah.
What I'm sure you'll probably get into it, but what do you think is the cause? What's why this trend?
I think a big portion of it, and we'll talk about that, Jason. We're somewhat guessing. A big portion of that was the water that the data centers had been using. In like 15, 16, 17, they were using a significant amount of potable water for dust control. One of our customers up there in 1 month spent $100,000 on potable water for dust control. And both of them have somewhat moved out of that phase of construction. They're no longer putting the utilities in, and or they're now purchasing that water through their meters, which is significantly less cost. But with all of that bulk water being sold, it really kind of masked this issue of the water fund being, the bulk water was really hiding some other issues in the water fund, and we're now starting to see that decrease in income. This graph here shows just what's going on in our water sales. So we were looking at the dollars. This is actual gallons of water. So we tell you guys we sell about 600 million gallons of water a year. You can see in 17 we were right there. In 18 we increased by, what would that be, another 50 million gallons, so approximately 8%. And then in 2019 we dropped significantly down. So we had expected 17, 18 to just continue trending up. We're getting, there's a lot of growth going on, new homes, new construction. And for reasons we'll discuss, 19, we just sold a lot less water. Could move to the next slide. One of the things we started looking at was, was this a seasonal issue? If you can remember, last spring seemed like it was very cold and wet. Last fall was very cold and wet. Seems like this spring has been very cold and wet. And you can somewhat see that here. We looked at, for the last 4 years, our average April, May, June temperatures. That June is just to date. But, it has been cooler. This is average monthly temperature, so a change of 3 or 4 degrees can be quite significant. We could drill down into this and look at, highs. We also looked at precipitation. It has been a little bit wetter, but not significantly. But for whatever reason, we haven't had those big hot spells that we sometimes get in April and May when people really start cranking up their yards and their gardens. Moving forward. This shows where we're currently at. Once again, this fund had a 2% increase budgeted as part of our biannual budget. We need 5 to fix this gap. We would like to apply our tiered rates this fall. With that said, if we were to apply our tiered rates with this new budget, people would be getting hit with that for essentially their August bill, which is usually people's highest bill. And we'd really like to apply the tiered rates this fall, which will make the system much more equitable, but that will allow our customers to kind of ease into this transition. So they'll start to feel those increased charges for their high use, maybe early next spring, so they can understand it rather than hitting them full bore this August. Bend, they're planning a 2% increase. They're going to hold it for the time being due to the COVID issue. Redmond's planning a 4% increase. They're going to implement it in January of this coming year. And Madras, we're assuming they're going to do about a 5%. So even with that 5% increase, we're still economical as compared to our neighbors. And at the end of the day, the water fund just needs this infusion. So like I said, we had a 2% budgeted. We'd like to do, or a 5% is needed. And once again, we just want to make sure that we're keeping our funds. We're increasing rates when we need to. We're not holding them down, and then having to come to you with large increases. So with that, I'd be happy to answer. Can we go back one slide? Steve, do you have anything to add to that? We've been looking at the models quite a bit, and I think this is what staff really sees as needed.
Yeah, I think the only thing, Erica, I would add is and you brought the point up, and I think it's really important for the council to understand is we didn't see this coming, and the good news is our models are very helpful, but they're also flawed, and our assumptions were wrong. We did not anticipate seeing a decrease in consumption, and I think it's partly because I think people are becoming more and more environmentally conscious, and that's a good thing. And then, of course, I think the bulk of our issue was the bulk water. The majority of our issue was the bulk water sales tapering off, which, again, from an environmental standpoint, is really good news because we should never use potable water for dust abatement. And so that was happening in a big way, as Eric pointed out, and it's not happening now. I think that's a good thing. So The other thing I think we need to keep in mind, just to reiterate where we think we're going to go, we're still real confident that as the data centers continue to build out, and remember the construction crews are back up there going huckle-de-buck, there's a whole lot of square footage on the Facebook side that's going to be put into production, and that's going to have a pull on some of their water consumption in terms of increasing that. So we still have a very robust future in demand for city water, and not to mention, we still have very active housing starts here in Prineville. Even with the COVID pandemic, we're still turning through building permits here at the city for new homes and as apartments and such. So we're going to continue to grow, and I think Eric's right. Is we don't like coming at you with a higher increase than we planned for, but we are really in a position where it's really necessary at this time.
Yep, I would agree with that. And so, we'd be happy to answer any questions. We can't make a decision right now, but this would be the proposal that we would bring to you at the last council meeting in June.
So your first slide addressed the sewer rates staying kind of flat. And if I remember correctly, the reason that we were able to do that is because of the wastewater treatment. Instead of going with the high expense mechanical costs and things like that we were going to be able to keep those costs relatively flat for quite a while. Is that still the case?
Oh yeah, for sure. So that system's working wonderfully. Our model there shows very minimal increases. We're not even increasing to keep up with the CIP, the increase in costs. With that said, we want to make sure that we don't do this for 10 years and then have some big oops. Mm-hmm. That system, Teresa, we were lucky that we were able to fund that with a lot of grant dollars. And so our debt service is quite low. But then again, we have that system, it's in place, very low cost. So now we can kind of just keep rolling through it. And the more customers that come online, they pay SDCs that refund that department. It's a really good deal. With the water fund, we're in the middle of this big project that we're going to talk about right now. So we're developing all of this capacity. We don't have a huge amount of demand. And so that's where, your costs are going to be higher at the inception of a big project rather than when you're running it at 95% capacity.
Thank you.
So moving forward, if we could move to the next slide, I'd like to talk about our ASR project. So this is the big project. I know we've talked about this a lot, but just to get everyone up to speed, this is our brainchild that we've been working on for the last 10 years. We've done a lot of studies. All of our data to date shows that it's going to work quite well. But what we're doing in this project is down by Les Schwab Field, south of town, we're building a large water treatment plant. We're drilling over 20 little shallow wells. Those wells will run through the treatment plant. The water is potable. It just has taste and odor issues. So manganese and sulfur will treat out of it. That plant we plan to run 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. In the winter, when our demands are low, we will inject that into the aquifer up at the airport and then be able to pull that treated water out during the summer. So once again, 10 years from now, this is going to be a very, very, very cost-effective way to provide water to our citizens. It'll really help us with those summertime peaks. We've gone through a large injection and recovery event. We did this last winter. So in December and January, we injected approximately 60 million gallons into that aquifer. We just recently recovered it, and everything's looking wonderful. The state is very, very pleased with the results of that. So that's great that project's going to be able to move forward. The issue we face right now is a funding issue. So our original cost estimate for this project back in 2017 was $12.72 million. We were able to fund this project 100% by system development charges. So these are customers coming to town. Apple was a big player in this. Facebook paid. We also had SDCs from single-family homes that were coming in. We used some sewer SDCs from Facebook in that we needed to extend a big interceptor line down to that facility, which will help with development south of town in the future. So that's how we had planned to pay for it. And if we could go to the next slide, the issue is that we're seeing some overruns. So those overruns could be related, they are related to just construction cost increases. From 2017 to 2020, we saw some significant increases in steel with the tariffs that were added and just the treatment materials. We had 3 different engineering teams working on this project. So that was Jacobs, Anderson Perry, and Cascade Geoengineers. If you remember, we delivered this project, or we are delivering this project through a progressive design build, to where we selected the engineering team and the contractor at the same time so that we could move quite quickly, which is one of the reasons we've been so successful with the data centers. But with that said, we're going into these projects with estimated costs. We didn't have it completely designed at the time. We're going to have to do a little additional treatment, more than we expected at the beginning. And then the frustrating geology that we've had at the airport. We had to drill several wells, up to 6 wells more than we expected up there, to triangulate in on that aquifer. The good news is that we found the aquifer. We know where it's at, and we know how it works now, but that was quite expensive, drilling all of those wells. Could move to the next slide. So what we're proposing to fix this gap, which right now it appears to not be more than 3 million, probably going to be 2.5 million or less, would be to take on some state special public works funding. That's currently at 2.47% for 30 years, which is a good rate. This would be refunded in the future by future system development charges. So I'm currently having conversations with some of the data centers that are talking about expansion. If they were to pay SDCs, then we would just pay this loan back and refund the water department. So just to understand that this is going to be new growth paying for this. And at the end of the day, this is a cost estimate that comes from the project delivery. It comes from cost increases and scope gaps. But this project will really be a generational project. This is how we're going to provide water to our community, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. Really an environmentally sensitive, very, very sustainable project. There's not much more of a project that's going to be resistant to climate change than this. And that's one of the reasons why we're hoping that we're the preferred spot for industrial expansion. In the future, we'll bring details to council. This would probably be in the next 2 or 3 months, but we just wanted to get you guys up to speed that this is where we're at with the project. So with that said, I'd be happy to answer any questions, or Steve, see if you had anything to offer.
Yeah, Eric, thank you. I think one of the things that Eric touched on that I think we need to maybe revisit just quickly is he mentioned, that we had some additional wells that needed to be drilled to zero in on the location of the aquifer, and that did cause some cost overrun issues. But at the same time, we had some gaps in some of the engineering proposals that were put together, and we had to make some changes with who was doing that work because they just missed some things. There were some significant gaps in there that should have never happened, and of course we've adjusted accordingly in how we approach that. So there was really a twofold issue there that needed to get resolved, and we've taken steps to do so. On the other hand, back to Eric's point about this being generational, this fits into exactly what Eric and his team and your staff at the city's done with the wastewater wetland out there at our treatment facility. This is state-of-the-art. It's environmentally correct, great reviews, nationally recognized projects, the ASR is right in there with it. And for a city of our size to be able to deploy this type of technology as part of our water system is really remarkable. And it really does define who we are as the city of Prineville in terms of how we approach the management of these very, very important and critical natural resources. So I can't emphasize that enough. We are very fortunate to have this technology deployed, and we're very upset and very disappointed that we didn't catch some of these gaps sooner. The economy kind of boogered us when it took off, and we've seen a lot of cost overruns in other projects around the Central Oregon in particular with other counties and municipalities. But nevertheless, that's on us, and we're going to have to adjust our funding to complete this project. But as Eric mentioned, this is truly a generational project. It's going to define our water system for decades to come. And if you look back on what we've done strategically here at the city, I would argue it's very rare to find a city like ours that I would characterize as ahead of the game in terms of capacities, wastewater capacity, and we'll be ahead of the game in water capacity. So when we do get an opportunity to look at a new company coming to Prineville with job creation, when we get a developer that wants to come to town and build some homes, that we're not up against a capacity constraint that would prevent those things from being able to happen. And Prineville's in a very, very enviable position that we have inventory of these critical utilities in our system, and that's very unique in today's world. And to do that without going out for bond is also quite remarkable. And to do that and keeping our utility rates competitive, especially against our contemporary communities here in Central Oregon, is again very remarkable. So we're in a very good spot, and it's a absolute testimonial to Eric and his team and the staff here that we're able to accomplish these things.
I think the thing I would add to that, Steve, you made the comment, we might have missed some things. We've been incredibly successful with the data centers being able to be quick on our feet. And so if you think about the last Facebook expansion where we were putting the utility lines up the hill in 36 feet of rock, we did that within a year. There's not too many people that could turn around a project that quickly. But we're delivering those projects through this progressive design build. And so how that works and how that worked with this ASR project is we look at a project, we get some idea of how it would work. We come up with a rough cost, and then we award that project. We start the design. We negotiate with the contractor on the prices. The other way to deliver this would be the traditional design, bid, build. So then we would take the time to design the project. We would put the project out to bid. We would select the lowest bidder, and that would be our project number. And so you can see we were coming up with these estimates very early on in the process versus later on after it was bid. And yeah, that can be frustrating, but we're also delivering these projects very, very quickly. And I think we're lucky that we've had the council support to deliver projects like this. And, we're just excited to see it move forward. So just want to make sure everybody understands those different forms of project delivery.
I guess my question, Eric, in hindsight, did we make the right choice?
I have some frustrations with some of the design, but with that said, that was a group that one of our funders, Apple, felt comfortable with. But with that said, it is what it is. We're trying to come up with a cost estimate based upon some feasibility studies. And so, like I say, we made some estimates on treatment. We had to apply a little more treatment. But I do strongly feel this is the right way to deliver projects if we want to be quick. And I think the city of Prineville being quick is why we've been successful as of late.
Okay. And I raised the question only moving forward. Do you still feel this is the proper way to go?
In the right situation, Steve, it's a lot more stress for staff to deliver projects this way. If we, obviously if we have time, we'll do the design bid build, because then, you got really hard numbers that you're working with the contractor. Right now, we have to look at their books, and, if we take, for instance, that utility line project, we don't have much experience with putting utilities 35 feet deep into solid rock. That's just not something we deal with. And so to negotiate those prices, I had to work with City of Bend and Redmond to see what prices they had awarded for similar work with the contractor. They opened up their books and showed me, if we do it the traditional way, you're just going off your low bid and then fighting with your contractor over change orders. So in the right situation, if we need to do this, we need to do this. But if we have time, I definitely would prefer the design bid build.
Thank you.
It allows you to get a much, much, much tighter number for budgeting.
Okay. Other questions from the council?
Yeah, just remember, we can't make any decisions tonight, but this is like where we're at and what we'll be bringing to council in the future.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, this is Jeff, and Eric, I appreciate the update. I can hear the frustration, and yeah, you're right. None of us expected some of these costs to go up the way they have, but I agree. I think it is a generational project. I think it's something we've got to move forward, and you hate to raise prices at any time, but it's inevitable. And I just think we got to keep moving forward and do what we have to think about our citizens, but at the same time keep the city whole. And I think we still got to go forward, and it's going to be exciting when this thing gets all done and what it's going to do for the city, not just now but in the future.
At the end of the day, what I would say to our, to you guys as our leader and our citizens is this is really just bridge funding. This is going to be paid by the next home being built or the next data center expansion or the next whatever it is. It's just, I would hate to stop the project and wait 9 months for something to happen and then start it back up.
So Eric, this is Janet. So on the ASR, you indicated that we're like 2.5 to 3 million short. And then you said that the new growth would be paying for this. Given the fact that we're in a recession now, if the new growth stops, then that means the city's on the hook for this. I'm just trying to get clarification.
Yeah, so that's a good point, Janet. And, we will never secure funds in our system development charge accounts. So like with water, we have our water fund, and then we have our water SDC fund. Same for transportation, same for wastewater. So we secure the debt in those funds where we have the guaranteed revenue. So yes, if we shut the gates and no more development came in, or if we went into a horrible recession, then yes, it would be at the end of the day the ratepayers. With that said, the debt service on this would be about $140,000, maybe $145,000 a year for 30 years. So if we had to use some of our contingency in the water fund to pay for a few years of recession, when growth comes, which growth will inevitably come, the water fund would be reimbursed for those payments, because we always make sure that our existing customers aren't paying for new customers. So yes, if we went into good God, let's not go into a 30-year recession, but if things did completely stop, it would be on the ratepayers to pick this up.
Oh, okay, and then this is Janet again. I had one more question on the water. Before you went into the ASR, you had said that the water, we already budgeted a 2% increase for this next year, and now you want to add 3% on top of that. Is that correct? Am I getting that right?
Yep, that would be what's needed to make up for the shortfalls that we have. With that said, we're going to closely watch the revenue in that fund over the course of the next, this summer will be interesting to see what water sales look like. And then, but that's what we project is we would need to add 3% to get to 5.
Okay, can I ask another question? Sorry.
No, that's fine.
So it's the bulk water rates or the water income that's down. So is part of it being down because our rates are too high and they're finding a different place that's more economical for them?
A lot of it, Janet, was just if I had to guess, was just the construction that was going on. And so at that time, the data centers, they were not finishing off the inside of their buildings. They were building roads. They were putting water lines in. They were using all of that water to keep the dust down in construction. We also had some solar projects that were using a lot of water. With that said, they've somewhat transitioned out of that stage, and their water system has been installed. So once their water system is installed, they can purchase that water through their meter, which is then no longer bulk. So then they're buying the water for like $2 a unit versus $10 a unit. And we also work with the irrigation district so that people can get irrigation water at a very, very, very lesser cost as compared to the potable water. It was just those consistently high sales of bulk water kind of masked that residential decrease.
Okay, and then one more question, sorry. But the other question is you're talking about the tiered water rate increase to take effect in September and us to vote on it in August? Or can you clarify that? Do I have that right?
So in the rate schedule right now, we'll bring to you just a simple 5% increase. The tiered rates will come back in August or September for implementation at a later date. That would allow us to analyze what happens this summer. And then that would be another council decision to decide if you want to go to the tiered water rates. I think we all agree that's a much more economical, or, if we don't do that, then we have the little lady on Social Security subsidizing the data centers, which we don't want to do. But yes, we would bring that back to you late summer, early fall for implementation sometime in the fall, Janet.
Thank you for answering all my questions.
Thank you.
Other questions?
So maybe I heard this wrong. This is Patricia. So we are going for a 5% increase, and then later on down the road, where they're going to look at the tier system?
Yes, both, Patricia. Yeah.
So can you bring us any sort of charts that show what that would be in a normal person's water increase? Or
well, yeah, we've kind of gone over a lot of that in that last council or workshop with Andy Parks. We're estimating that, as far as customers go, this would be affecting maybe 30%. So these are the customers that use significantly more water during the summer than they do during the winter. And once again, there would be no impact on a normal residential customer other than this 5% increase with the tiered rates. But as we jump into the tiered rates more, Patricia, we can definitely walk through those and go through different scenarios. But it would be very similar to what Andy had showed us at the last workshop.
So I have another question. And it's regarding the new apartments that are being built, and they have, I don't know how many units in there. How do you bill them? Is it a whole, do they get each unit? Because a lot of apartments have the water included, and is it the owners that are paying the water bill? And would they then, obviously they would be in that high tier because they would be using a whole lot. And the sewer rates, would they be charged per unit, or how do you guys do that?
Yeah, so, and as we had discussed in the last council meeting, their water demand will be based upon, so they have a water demand associated with the number of units. We look at the faucets and it's called a faucet count, how many toilets, how many showers. That determines the size of the meter. So let's say for that facility, they need a 3-inch meter. A 3-inch meter can provide like 50 times as much as a 3/4-inch meter.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have a higher monthly rate. They pay for each unit, but their tiered rate is higher. It takes them more units to get into those higher tiers just based on the size of their meter. And that's something that we can bring back to council to help you understand that. So like with a normal residential customer, if you're using, let's say 10 units during the winter, you might not get up into that tiered rate until you get to 40 or 50 or whatever it would be. A 3-inch meter having the capacity of 50 times that, they may be using 500 units during the winter, and then they would get into the tiered system at a proportional share. So it's very equitable. Proportionally, everyone would be paying that same amount. As far as wastewater goes, we charge each unit a wastewater charge as we would a single home.
Wow, very interesting. Thank you.
Love the questions. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Is there any other material to be covered?
Eric, I'm satisfied that I covered what we need to cover on the franchise. Are you good with the water rates and the ASR update?
Yeah, I really appreciate everybody's time and the good question. It's interesting. We'll continue to watch the water revenue, and we'll keep the council apprised of what happens.
This is Patricia again. Just a comment from public people that I have spoken to who have been listening to our council meetings. They don't understand a lot of the abbreviations that we're using. And is it possible that maybe we could ask for the long spelled out version, because a lot of folks don't know what a lot of our abbreviations are?
Yeah, for sure we can do that. You're going to have to help us with it because we speak these acronyms all day long. So just stop us if we're talking about SDCs rather than system development charges.
Yeah.
Yep, I understand them.
I think certainly in the written form we can do our best to address that, and then I think we need to coach each other on when we're speaking and remind each other to not use the acronyms or at least explain them. So that's a good point. Thank you. I mean, that happens. I know that happens a lot, and certainly if I sit down with Jared for very long, I get acronymed out. Don't understand what the heck he's talking about. So that's a very good point. We'll work on that.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you. Well, if that's it, let's close the workshop and reconvene in a half